All right, Steve, here we go in three, two, one. Welcome to the show, you guys. I am so excited to be joined by Mayah Rose today. First off, welcome. I'm so glad you're here with me.
Me too. This is exciting.
And second, I just want to talk a little bit about how when you say yes to something and you get really unattached to the outcome, how it just kind of delivers in business. So I want to tell a little story about how we met because I think it's really interesting. I had the opportunity to speak at an event, didn't really know much about the community that I was going to be speaking in, but my heart just said, like go for it. It's an experience. And so I had made some beautiful connections that day. And like 5 minutes before I go on stage, I'm like on deck, mic on, ready to go. I just see this couple kind of tinkle in from the side. And I don't know at the time who you are. And truthfully, I go on stage, I speak, and then we never connected that evening. I wasn't able to stay for when you guys were going to be presenting later on, or your husband rather. And that next morning, I was kind of like, I don't know if I should really go early. I don't know if I feel like networking today. But something in my heart was like, you know what? Just go. If nothing more, you'll have some quiet time and a coffee. And as I'm standing in line at Starbucks, I just hear this soft voice like, Amanda, Amanda. And that's when you introduced, and we had this amazing connection. And you have a robust history in speaking and connection. And we had this beautiful conversation for 45 minutes. And it's just a reminder for me, and why I'm sharing it with all of you listening is that often we say yes to things, and maybe our initial thought is, how is this going to serve me? What's the profit? What's the impact that it might make? And what we find out is we end up making some sort of connection or something that we never really expected. And I love that part of business. So that's when Mayah and I met, and here we are today.
You know what's so funny about that? We were actually like an hour early. We had our times wrong. And so we were randomly there an hour early. And I was just like, you know what? I feel like going to Starbucks to Gerald. So we looked up and found one there. And I think I saw you standing there. So anyway, that was really fun. And what a great opportunity to connect. And when we were talking, I'm like, oh, this is like a soul sister. You know how when you just like meet somebody and you think, okay, this is why I'm here. One of the reasons why I'm here. So that was really fun to tune in with you and it was so fun to watch you the night before. Oh my gosh. If any of you have not seen any of Amanda's presentations, she's amazing. So
Well,
definitely
thank you.
recommend
I
that.
appreciate
Yeah.
you for saying that so much. And so that's when we dove in a little bit into your history and the work you did, the work you do. So I'd love just to give some context for our audience. And would you mind just giving kind of a recap, whatever highlights really you want to share around what brought you to where you are in the work you do now?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. You know, it's one of those questions you're like, well, do I start when I was born? Do I, where
Yeah,
do I
I
jump
mean, that's
in?
why I leave it open ended. I like think that there's like highlights and different things resonate with like different seasons of life too that seem really relevant.
Yeah, well, I'll jump in here. You know, I got married very young, had all four of my kids by the time I was 26. I did the whole stay-at-home mom thing for a long time, even though my heart was like so an entrepreneur. I was like the one that started all the preschool, you know, the at-home preschools that all of my kids were at. I was the art mom at my kids' school. I was like running, you know, programs at the local church. Like my heart was in entrepreneurship, but you know, I was a quote unquote stay-at-home mom. And then in 2008, the market crashed and we had just built a house to flip, my ex-husband and I. Plus, he was in the construction business. So this house that we built for cost ended up being worth like half of what we built it for. And we were going to turn around and, you know, flip it and make a profit. So it was really a house we couldn't afford in the first place. And, you know, I remember waking up one morning during this whole thing and thinking, oh my word, we are going to have to declare bankruptcy. We're going to lose the house. And I don't even know how we're going to be able to feed the kids next week. Like it was that bad. And I remember this moment where I thought, well, either I can just be like, okay, I accept that this is how things are, or I could do something about it. And I remember that moment, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to become an entrepreneur. And so that was my start in business. And I went through a cycle. I had several businesses, but during this whole time, I was still committed. I was like, no, I'm a full-time stay-at-home mom and I'm like a closet entrepreneur. Like I had these businesses on the side and things. And it was great because they kept us above water. We were able to keep the house. You know, more importantly, we were able to feed the kids, which is what I was really concerned about. And so but I found that I loved entrepreneurship. But in 2015, I also started feeling a pull or a call to do more. At the time, I was running a foot zone business. So that's like reflexology, only more holistic. But I was teaching a lot of these life principles and these life changing tools. And that was a thing that was really having the effect on people's lives. And so I wanted to speak more about it. I wanted to get out there more. I wanted to write a book. I didn't know how to do it. I was living in a town of less than 5,000 people in Idaho. And even though I'd had these successful businesses, I had no idea how to get a massive reach, how to go national or global. So one morning I was doing yoga in my master bedroom in the house we didn't lose. And I remember laying in Shavasana and just being like, God, universe, I surrender. Whatever you want, I will do it. I feel like there's a message. I feel like I'm supposed to be doing more. And Amanda, it was so crazy. In the next 9 months, I'm not kidding you, like random things happened. I got a TV show. I got a radio show. I ended up co-founding a radio channel on Voice America. I was speaking at an event my second time ever in LA, like this small town Idaho girl. I'm doing interviews on the red carpet outside Walt Disney Concert Hall with people like John Travolta and Halle Berry. I'm pinching myself going like, what is happening? I published a book. I started speaking internationally. I remember I went over and spoke at the Women's Economic Forum in India, and it felt like all my dreams were coming true. I was experiencing this massive success, and I went from a reach of 2,000 to 2 million in just 9 short months per month. And this was like on the outside, it looked like I had everything together, and it was incredible. It was amazing. Don't get me wrong. There were lots of amazing things about it. And I also got way too much in my masculine energy. I started becoming so achievement focused that although I was doing all these great things and having all these accomplishments, I started losing touch with myself. I started losing connection with the people that were most important in my life. And fast forward just a few years later, I found myself completely depressed. I remember going into the doctor and, telling her, I think I may be struggling with depression. And she said, what makes you say that? And I just burst into tears. And I was crying for like 10 minutes. I couldn't even get a word out. And finally, after 10 minutes, she's like, I think you may be right. Like, I think there's something here. And so even though I had everything that I thought I wanted, I was totally burnt out and disconnected from myself and others. And I remember waking up one morning, I was living in Phoenix at the time, moved from Idaho to Phoenix. And I remember waking up and wondering, like, is life even worth living right now? And at the time, I remember I said, God, universe, am I loved? And at that moment, there was one blind that was broken in the master bedroom. Like the end of it was broken off, and the sun hit just right and shone on my face. And I felt this blanket of love wash over me. And I knew in that moment that that love did exist and that I didn't want to live the way I lived anymore. So I grabbed my notebook and my pen, I stuck it in my backpack, and I hiked to the top of South Mountain in Phoenix by my house. And I sat down, I said, I'm not leaving until I figure out how I can find happiness again. And I wrote myself a letter from the universe. And in that letter was all the things that I needed to do to be able to find happiness, including some really hard things like graduating from my current marriage and making some changes in my business and my personal life to refocus on my mission and my purpose. And I remember hiking down off the mountain and with each step thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be hard, but I'm going to have the courage to do this. And I got down and I started implementing the changes. And within just a year, I found myself experiencing so much more happiness and fulfillment. Then 2 years, I was now with my soulmate, my partner, who is my business partner. Then 3 years, here I am traveling around the world, living the life that I love, waking up every day, excited to live life, making a bigger impact, a bigger difference, being happier than ever. And I remember the moment I was at a Dr. Joe Dispenza workshop thinking, I saw a woman and I thought, I want her to know what I found out. I want her to experience. I could feel that burnout and I could feel that hustle and that struggle from her, and the outside success, but the inside feeling hollow or feeling disconnected. And so I got back and I was meditating, and during this meditation, I just downloaded in a detail a program that was basically what I had done for myself to be able to help other women be able to be in tune with what I call their femintuition, to find the balance between the masculine and the feminine so that they can have that success in their life, but also the fulfillment so that they can create big results in life, but not experience burnout. And so I started sharing this and teaching this to other women, and it's just had a huge impact on many women's lives. And today I love working with women, helping them find that balance, teaching them about femintuition so they can really have that internal and external happiness, achievement, and fulfillment.
Oh my goodness. All right. There's a lot of nuggets in that story that resonate. And one of them that I want to hit on is I think a lot of women can relate, especially, and I don't want to make a rule of it, but, women hitting that maybe kids are quasi leaving the house. You've rolled through the what I would quote unquote call the hard young years. At least they were harder for me. You've been in a career for a while, or maybe been running your business for a while, and you start to ask that question. Maybe like, is this it? Like, is there something more? What's happening? Because I know I've had that moment, and I think so many women can relate to that. All right, like, just show me something, give me a nugget, show me a sign that this is where I'm supposed to be, or show me the signs of where I should be. So I just want to say thank you for just, I think, validating the story of so many. Um, but one thing that I want to really dive into together is the notion of masculine and feminine. So before we dive into it, though, could you give us your definition of what you would call masculine energy versus feminine energy? Because I don't want to say that the feminine side of things is trendy. I just think we're becoming more self-aware that there's an option. But I do see a lot of this, shared in many of the coaching circles I'm a part of. But in being someone who definitely relates to more of the masculine energy in life, sometimes it's hard to see, from an outsider, that balance. So I want to speak to that balance. But first, can you define like what each is so we can have like a baseline conversation around
Yeah,
them?
I'd love to define that. And then just to add a little bit more about what you said as well about, what's trendy right now and why maybe the feminine is in right now. But I like to compare this to the yin and the yang. So you've heard of yin and yang. The yin is associated with the feminine, the yang with the masculine. The yin is more of the moon energy. The yang's more of the sun energy. The yin's more of the flow. The yang's more of the boom, energy. And so when we're talking about feminine energy, this is the energy of flow, of connection, of being present in the moment. And the masculine energy is the energy of let's get things done, let's create forward movement, and let's have a big bursting result in our life or in the world. And so yeah, and both are needed. Both are definitely needed. And I never say to somebody, you are only divine feminine or divine masculine. Like, it's the balance of both that we need. And it's interesting that you say the divine feminine is more trendy. So when we're talking about masculine and feminine, I'm not talking about male and female necessarily, although sometimes we talk about the female being associated with feminine and the male being associated with masculine. But here's what happened. In 2012, there were a lot of ancient calendaring systems, including the Mayan calendaring system, that predicted the end of the world. Do you remember that? Yeah, but it didn't happen, right? The world didn't end. There wasn't a huge destruction. But what some people theorize now, and what really resonates with me, is that in 2012, it really was the destruction of the unconscious masculine and the invitation for the conscious feminine, or the conscious feminine rising. So what this means is, prior to 2012 and for millennia, we've seen that there's been one leader in charge. Usually it's a male, but sometimes it's a female. But we've had one leader in charge. It's their way or the highway. Everybody else needs to obey them or submit to them or whatever that is, right? And that's just how it is. And there was a lot of force or masculine energy, like if somebody didn't comply, we're going to go in and we're going to declare war on them, right? And now in 2012, we're seeing a shift. And that shift is more towards the divine feminine. Feminine is also about community. So it's more about community. It's about working together. It's about collaborating and coming up with a better way for all of us to live together. And so I really noticed that energy shift in 2012. And I think that's why people feel more drawn to the feminine right now, or the feminine way of doing things, is because of that shift around 2012.
Yeah. And I mean, and this is a little offshoot, but I don't know if you've ever read Dr. Libby Weaver's book called Rushing Women's Syndrome. Are you familiar with that, her work? Oh, it's a fantastic book. But essentially, she just talks about the culture and the standards set specifically for mothers, women in general, but also mothers, and how so much of our culture through the years is we've created this unconscious, like, systemic badge of honor for busyness and masculine energy and muscling through and like not slowing down. That's weak. And so it's almost like I felt it. I was probably leading the charge a lot, if I'm real, in preschool. Like when I was a preschool mom, of like, look at me, I could do all these things. Look at me, like, look at my plate. Look at all this stuff. It's overflowing. And while I do think that's a strength specifically for me, and I think a lot of women relate, there is consequences of that strength, right? And
Yeah.
at some point, you're going to face burnout or exhaustion or just the need to find another way. But her book specifically was an eye opener for me of just how to explore this. And she uses this analogy just to share. And you've probably heard it, but just for the listeners again, is if you take a frog and you have a pot of water and you put the frog in at lukewarm, right? The room temperature, the frog's happily swimming around in the pot of water. If you put the frog in when the pot's boiling, the frog is like frantically trying to get out the pot. However, if you put the frog in when it's room temperature and slowly turn it up to a boil, the frog is able to adapt to the external environment. And this is how she kind of says, like, this as women, this is what we've been really doing for so many years of our life is we go to school, we get married, we're supposed to find soulmates, we're supposed to have families, like just the traditional way. And so the stimulus around us is just growing and intensifying, and internally we are just adapting, and that masculine energy is forcing us to keep going. And that just came to my brain because I think for me it's a relatable way in my brain to connect what you're saying as well. And eventually there is a stopping point for which that's not sustainable, whether that's health fallout, whether that's I don't know. There's so many consequences
Well,
eventually could exist.
and here's the truth too. In business and in life, whatever, from stemming from when we, had this unconscious male patriarchy and things. Hormonally, let's shift from this into hormones. Okay, hormones are different between men and women. They just are. And the way that a man or a male's hormone cycle works is it resets every day. So a lot of the business, a lot of life, a lot of what we feel like we need to be doing are set around this daily cycle, right? This daily reset. Every day we need to show up this way. Every day we need to be doing more. Every day we need to be busy. All of these things, right? Well, the fact of the matter is a woman's hormonal cycle, no matter how old she is, a woman's hormonal cycle is monthly. So there are these ebbs and flows, and it goes along with the four phases of the hormonal cycle, the menstrual cycle with a woman, and also corresponds with the four phases of the moon. It's really interesting. And when I was downloading this program, interestingly enough, there are four archetypes of the divine feminine, and two are yin and two are yang. And what's really interesting, my really good friend, Dr. Kayla Oosterhoff, if you haven't heard of her, definitely look her up. She talks about this and like the hormonal balance, especially with women in the workplace, and being able to use our hormones to work with us. Because for a phase of the month, we thrive more on being internal. We thrive more on taking care of ourselves, relaxing. Then there's a portion of the month that we step into that's like the production portion. Like our hormones are at peak potential for us to get shit done, to get results, right? And then there's a phase where we are the most charismatic that we can be. This is a great time for filming or being out in public or
I'm in
leading.
that phase right now, just as a note.
Yeah. And then we have this hormonal phase that's really good for long-term planning. So as we come to learn this as women, and we come to understand ourselves and which of the archetypes that we are needed in which time or which phase, and which of the hormones that we're working with during what time of the month, and even the lunar cycles, like if we really understand that as women, now we can work to our peak potential. We don't have to have or experience burnout, because you're right. If we try and push ourselves every single day in the same way, and we don't ever pay attention to these other parts of us, then we will experience burnout. And that's when we feel that disconnect from ourselves and others. And no matter how much we're accomplishing on the outside, we just don't feel fulfilled on the inside, because we aren't honoring ourselves and our cycles.
Totally. And when I first kind of came into this work, it wasn't even identified as divine feminine. I simply have a great friend who started teaching me more about cycles and being somebody who muscles through. A lot of my story was when I didn't feel productive, right? When I was like, why are things not working? Why am I not, I'm air quoting, motivated? Why am I not performing like I normally would feel inspired to be? What I started doing was tracking it, right? Just in an app. And for me, that this data driven mind, the scientist of a mind, started making connections to this. And so that's what I personally needed to start to go, oh, yeah, like there is something here. I'm starting to see this. Like a few days before my cycle starts, I'm starting to have the thoughts like, this isn't working. Everything's going to fall apart. Like, is this sustainable? And instead of going into my old pattern of, oh my gosh, I got to work harder, what I learned to do is like step back and just let it all be and just like start to trust that this too shall pass. And so in saying that, I think there's if you're somebody listening who definitely it like resonates with the GSDer in me, like, that I am, then I think that there can articulate that balance. It doesn't have to be so far, both directions. So I would love to know from your perspective, like, what does that balance in both of those energies look like?
Yeah, I'd love to share. But first of all, I have one suggestion for you.
Please.
So I love that you said you were able to step back and say, this too shall pass. Here's like one level, um, even more effective than that. I'm going to put it that way. Step back and say, I love this too. Right.
Mm.
This is really so. I just got done teaching a class about the 10 tantric energies or goddesses, and the class was all about learning to love all these phases, learning to love the shadow as much as we love the light. And when we learn to love our shadow and accept it as part of us, that's when we're whole and complete. So, first step is to step back and observe and notice. And the second step is to love whatever we're noticing or experiencing. So, just a small shift there. But yeah, when it comes to the
I love
divine,
that, by the way. Thank you.
you're like, it's hard to do sometimes, but very effective. So, but yeah, when it comes to the divine masculine, divine feminine, so really there are 4 different archetypes. So there are 4 different energies. 2 are yin and 2 are yang. And when we, as those who identify or relate to feminine energy, if we can really understand these 4 different archetypes and have a good relationship with each of them and understand when it's important to lead with which one, then we experience that balance in our life. So the first one is the healer. And the healer is very much a yin energy. That's that part of us that is intuitive. That's that part of us that's connected to ourselves, connected to other people, connected to nature, connected to our communities, connected to the universe, to the superconscious, right? This is that part of us that's unconditionally loving with ourselves and others, and that's so patient with ourselves and others. In fact, in my programs, I have people come up with names for each of their archetypes to help them identify with them more fully. And my name for mine is mother, because this is, to me, this is the energy that I step into when I'm a mother. I unconditionally love my kids. I'm so patient with them most of the time. And, and I can feel that deep connection and intuition. Now, how this relates to, just a side note here, how this relates to where we are in our hormonal cycles. This is that time when you're really menstruating, right? This is that time when you get to turn inward and take care of yourself and fill your bucket. And if you do that, you'll experience the connectedness, the intuition, the unconditional love, and the patience, right? When we're not connected with this part of us, that's where we really experience a lot of judgment. That's where we experience burnout. That's where we experience feeling like we're tired all the time, and just disconnected from ourselves and others. So the healer is just a really important part, and it's important that we have a good relationship with the healer. Now, at the end, I'll tell you how you can get access to a quiz where you can know where you stand with each of these 4 different archetypes. But already you're probably guessing, how am I doing with my healer or not, right? Okay, the second archetype. So first one's healer, yin, all about filling up your bucket. If you do that, you're connected, intuitive, patient, unconditionally loving. Second one is the warrior. The warrior is very much masculine energy. This is yang energy. This is the get stuff done energy, right? And this is where a lot of women that say they're too much in their masculine, they spend too much time in this archetype and they ignore the others, and it creates burnout. burnout. But when you have a good relationship with this archetype and it's balanced with the other ones, it's so great because this is that part of us that gets results. This is that part of us that's productive and focused and that creates those results when we need to. This is that part of us that sets boundaries as well. And this is really important because when you have a good relationship with this archetype and you know how to set boundaries on your time, on your relationships, on whatever that is in your life, then you feel safe to have these relationships with the other archetypes. Now, when you're too much in this energy, that's when you're going to experience burnout, right? That's when you're too much in your masculine. So you can already see how the healer and the warrior complement each other. And you may be noticing in your life where you would want to be in the healer, where in the warrior. Now, the third archetype, this is the one that is the most triggering for the most people. So I would just invite you, if you're listening, you feel triggered, just to step back and ask why. It's the temptress. So this is the energy of fun and play. This is the energy of feeling sexy and flirty. And I'm not talking about flirty with other people. This is like flirty with life, not taking life too seriously. I'm talking about sexy. This is feeling good in your own body. The temptress is the yin energy that's all about enjoying the present moment. When you have a good relationship with this archetype, you know when to shut down the work brain and step into play mode. You can dance and enjoy life. You can eat food, and instead of just shoving your face to get on to the next thing, you're like, bite into a strawberry and you feel the explosion of flavor in your mouth and the juice is running down your throat and you just are like, wow, the strawberry is amazing. This is that part of you when you have a good connection with the temptress. You could go outside. Maybe you're just walking to your car in the parking lot, but instead of just hustling with your head down to get there, you close your eyes for a minute and feel the breeze in your face and the sun on your skin, and you just think, wow, this moment's amazing, right? So the temptress is very important in your ability to be able to enjoy life. And most people that are experiencing depression, it's because they don't have a good connection. And I'm talking about situational depression, but it's because they don't have a good connection with this temptress. They aren't able to really slow down and enjoy life. They aren't able to pause and enjoy the moment. So that's the other yin energy. And then the last one, which is yang energy, is the queen energy. This is the big picture. So we have healer, which is all about filling your bucket. The warrior, which is how do I get stuff done now to create results. We have the temptress, which is all about how do I enjoy life now and have a fun time and feel good in my skin and my body. And the queen is all about what's my big term picture? What am I doing to really build or create my queendom? How am I delegating tasks so that I can maintain a good energetic state, but still build and grow and create, right? This is all about the long-term vision, building teams, support systems in place to help you, about allowing people to help you, allowing people to serve you. You know, how many of us, I am totally guilty of this, are like, okay, I'm just going to do it myself because it's way faster and easier. But
Oh
in the
yeah,
long run,
totally.
you can't build your business that way. You can't even effectively, if you have children, you can't even really most effectively run your household that way, right? Because you're just going to have burnout. So the queen is all about really creating that big term picture. And when you have a good connection with your queen, you are confident. You are unstoppable. You are just this person who can manifest and create anything in your life, and you have teams and people on board to help you, and it feels like everything's falling into place. So those are the 4 different archetypes, and when you have a good relationship with each of those, that creates the balance, that creates the wholeness. And they each go along with a cycle. The healers when you're menstruating, the warriors just after you're done menstruating, the temptress is when you're actually ovulating, and then the queen is just before menstruation again. So yeah, it's just really beautiful when you understand all of these. And then there's different areas of your life that you're going to step into each of these on a daily basis. But when you have that wholeness and that completion, you really experience that goddess energy, and you're able to create an ease and a flow and abundance and fun. And it's really amazing and incredible.
Yeah, and I feel like it's a bit of working smarter and not harder. And this is coming from someone, like who was really resistant to the slowdown. I love self care, quote unquote, right? Taking care of myself, but the resistance to really this conversation as a whole. But for me, so much of what I experience during these shifts is internal, like the inner dialogue, the inner conversations happening. For me, that's where it became most apparent. And I started to see some of these things happening internally that were cyclical. And that was when the light bulb was like, oh, okay, there's something here. And what if I just take some time to step back and get, curious about how things are shifting so that I could take some sort of, action step forward to honor each of these parts.
Yeah. It's really interesting. This just reminds me when I first got together with my husband, my life partner, my soulmate. Oh my gosh, he's just I never thought that anybody could have such an amazing relationship. But when I first got together with him, I was addicted to work. And I think that's what happened towards the end of my last marriage. And as I was going into divorce and I had all these painful things I didn't want to face or experience in my life, I just started working. It's like work, work, work. If I just keep myself busy, then I don't have to think about all the stuff that's going wrong in my life. Right. And so I was still kind of in this mode when I met him, and he just started challenging me. He's like, why don't you just do nothing for a day? And I'm like, are you kidding me? You may as well like lock me up or like cut off my arm or something. Do nothing for a day. What are you talking about? And I'm like, but I've got to make money. I've got to get stuff done, And then of course, after my divorce, it was in the single mom mode. And, how am I going to, survive and create and take care of my kids? And it was so interesting because I started taking him up on these challenges, and I started taking more time to do nothing. And the most fascinating and incredible thing happened. I started making more money. I started making more of an impact, and I started loving my life even more. And I'm like, logically, this makes no sense, but it works. And started tapping in more to the super conscious. So instead of trying to hustle to get things done, now ideas just came to me when I actually took time to slow down and listen, and things just seemed to happen. So it's amazing. And really, if you're new to this and you're experiencing some resistance, I mean, the first thing that I would suggest is just if you go to my website, mayahroseacademy.com, there's a really easy quiz that you can take. There's a free 40-minute workshop that talks about all of these, but there's some suggestions in the workshop for things you can do. So for example, even just for the healer, like one activity that everybody can do right now is close your eyes. So Amanda, just close your eyes with me and just do a body scan. Start at the top of your head and just notice how you're feeling in your body. Scan down through your head, your neck, your shoulders, your spine, your torso, your hips, your legs, all the way to the bottom of your feet. And just notice, where's one area of your body that could use some extra love and attention right now. So Amanda, where's that one area for
It's
you?
it's my toes.
Your
Just having that
toes.
the sense of like, okay, I need to like crack them, move my feet.
Yeah, moving your feet.
Transparently, I did just work out before this. Really, I had a
Yeah.
hard workout before this too. So
Well, it's amazing. And right now you can just grab your toes with your hands or just move them in the way that feels good, but just send a lot of love to your toes right now. Just pay attention to your toes and just listen. Move them if you need to move them, or put your hand on them and send loving energy to them. But just paying attention just for 10 more seconds is all. Just love those toes, do whatever they need, pay attention. You can keep your eyes closed or with your eyes open. Now take a deep breath in and just say, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you from your toes to yourself. Like, it's as simple as that. It takes like 30 seconds, but if you just close your eyes, you can even take 10 seconds to do this a couple times throughout the day and just like do a body scan and say, where in my body needs attention right now? What does it need? And just fulfill that and give it to your body. It's going to create more of a trust with yourself to now start listening to your intuition more. One thing you mentioned was there's a lot of women that feel like called to do more. Like, what's my purpose? What should I be doing in life? Well, one of the reasons why you aren't getting an answer is because you aren't listening. You aren't listening to yourself, and it starts with listening to your body. It starts with listening to what you need and giving yourself what you need. And now that you start listening to what your body needs and actually doing that, now your intuitions can come in and say, okay, listen, you should be doing this. And then it trusts that you're going to act on it, and you can trust yourself knowing that you're going to act on it. So it builds that trust up.
yeah, and I think a really simple example of this is, why do we talk about so many amazing downloads happening in the shower? Because you are monofocused, right? One thing, you're in the shower, this hot water is hitting you, it feels so good. You're so present in the shower, right? There's no distractions. And this is also for me for running, or if you're like to walk, like these are some of the most pivotal download times where you get these creative aha moments because you are present with your body. You create the space. typically, you're alone, and all of this amazing energy can flood in. And I think that this is just an example of what if you replicated that in your life, even for 30-second nuggets, or you take the first half of the day off, you take a full day off and do nothing, right? And if you keep just dosing yourself with these opportunities to be present into nothingness, I think it's so crazy, because through the years, I give that assignment often to clients of just, I want you to sit for an hour and do nothing. And it is the most uncomfortable assignment,
Mhm.
hands down, that women take on as a homework assignment. And I just think that it's so, I don't know, my heart hurts for it, first off. And second, I think it's really powerful what we can learn about ourselves in that time.
Well, and it's incredible too, and especially paired with activations. So when we're actually actively working to raise the frequency at a cellular level and structural level on the DNA, Bruce Lipton talks a lot about this. There's a whole science behind it, right? What we think or what we don't think, right? If we're doing nothing, creates this whole cascade in our body, which emits a signal out. One of the things that I love to do is these activations with women, where we activate the different energies within them. And then I give them assignment like to go listen or to do nothing or whatever that is. And once they've activated that cellular level, once they're vibrating at a higher frequency and then they go listen, they're able to understand or receive at a higher frequency. I had a woman that I was working with recently, a personal client, and she was so distraught about what to do with her business. She had two different paths before her. She was like at a fork in the road. She's like, if I go down this path, then this would happen. If I go down that would happen. And she was just logically, she was stuck. She was in a loop, just completely stuck on what decision to take, right or left, which one should I do? And it was really interesting. We did this divine feminine activation with her. We actually did a healer activation with her and helped her step into this energy of really just aligning with what's going to be best for me, what's going to fill my bucket, what's going to fulfill me and my purpose. And then she went into stillness. And I'm not kidding you, within an hour, not only was she more clear in her direction, but during that hour of stillness and meditation, two crucial things happened. One that basically closed the doorway for one path, and one that completely opened the doorway on the other path. So there really are signs and signals that we're sending out into the universe. And if we send out that sign or signal that we're willing to listen, the universe is going to answer. And another really great thing to do is if you're going to go into meditation, or if you're going to go into silence, or if you're just going to do nothing for an hour, ask yourself a question beforehand, because it really is when we go into the nothing, that's when we go into the theta states of our brain. This is when we access the super conscious, is what Dr. Joe Dispenza and some of these other doctors call this now. And so seeding it with a question is beautiful, because really we are seeding this question to our subconscious brain, which is the gateway to the superconscious. So asking a question like, how can I continue to create more connection with my spouse or my children, or how can I continue to create a greater impact in the world, or how can I continue to create financial abundance in my life? And you may notice some similarities. Continue is a key word, but asking these powerful questions, never ask a question with a negative, but only with a positive. It seeds the mind. And then you go into nothingness. And when you're still enough to actually listen, this is when you find the answers that you're looking for. This is also a great practice to do right before bed. Write a question down before bed, seed your intuition. It's just a beautiful practice. That 5 minutes before you go to bed, or right before you go into meditation or doing nothing, if you ask yourself a question, it's really going to help your brain know what to look for.
You're amazing. I didn't even need to ask you, what are some tangible takeaways? Because you just gave us so many. So I appreciate that. And I love that you were able to make it, I think, relevant for so many of our listeners, and help to find that balance between all of those energies. So I would love if you would share, you already mentioned the quiz to take, but would you just share where people can connect with you again, say your website for us, or wherever you'd like to direct them, the best place so they can hang on to that. And everything she says, of course, will be inside the show notes.
Yeah. So thank you so much. So Mayah Rose Academy, and Mayah is spelled Mayah. and then Rose, ROSE Academy. So MAYAH, roseacademy.com. If you go there, you can click on a button. You can take the four quizzes, one for each of the archetypes. You'll get a score to see how imbalanced you are, how in balance you are. And there's also a brief video workshop there. It's 40 minutes long. It's definitely worth listening to if you want to dive deeper into this, understanding these different archetypes, how to create more of a balance in your life so that you can create this ease and abundance and flow. And I'm telling you, it's so beautiful and wonderful. And it's my favorite thing in the world to see women just fully embracing their lives and waking up every morning happy and excited to live life. You can find me on Facebook, Allison Mayah Rose Rogers, or on Instagram. And also have a channel on YouTube called Legendary, with several videos out on this very topic, along with meditations that you can listen to, visualizations, and some things that I've done with my husband on relationships and how to build a partnership in a relationship that is really next level. So you can find me lots of places, but check out MayahRoseAcademy.com to get your quizzes.
Amazing. Thank you so much for spending time with us and sharing your zone of genius. I am so grateful. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Amanda.